How many of you are familiar with Charles Darwin, or at least heard of him? Okay, so most of you are probably also familiar with the saying, survival of the fittest. I have personally felt that that's not an accurate representation of the concept. I think that it should be survival of the most adaptable. So over the next 5 minutes, I'm going to share with you a series of life events that I think have fostered what I consider my most valuable attribute, which is adaptability. Whenever I was 4.5 years old, my father, my 2 older brothers, and I decided to take a road trip to Tyler, Texas. So we all climbed into the big green Malibu car with the white leather seats, the 8-track player. I think it was, who was it playing? I Love a Rainy Night. That's what was playing. Anyway, so we decided to go to Tyler, which is about 2.5 hours from Dallas. And if you know, if you have children or if you've ever been a child, then you also know that's an eternity. So I ended up going to sleep on this road trip, and when we arrived, I woke up, I looked around, and my father and my brothers were nowhere to be found. We were going to see my mother. So I peeled my legs off the sweaty white seats, made my way out of the car, and I ran over to where my father was across the greenery. I then expressed to him how upset I was that he didn't wake me up to give my mother the roses. He told me, he said, "Don't worry, I saved one for you." So I took the rose from my father, I was so excited, and I laid it on the ground next to the tombstone that said Sherry Ann Stringer, 1953 to 1981. My mother died at the age of 29 of cancer. But for me, it was also a turning point in my life that set the stage that helped me foster what I consider my most valuable attribute, which is adaptability. You may be wondering why and what the tie is. Well, my father was married 3 times after my mother passed away. Talk about adaptable. So the first wife was very strong and independent. The second one, extremely educated. And the third, very kind. So while it was tragic that my mother passed away, it was also a blessing in the sense that I had all these women in my life that I could take something from and apply it to my life where I saw fit. The second life event that I'm going to talk about has to do with travel. After graduating from college with a journalism degree, I went into corporate America. I moved to Austin, worked here for 6 years, and then I had the opportunity to move to New York City and work there for a while. The corporation I was working for ended up being acquired by a bigger corporation, and at that point I said, you know, it's time to take a break. Let's take a break from the corporate world and enjoy the real one. So I looked at my fiance at the time, his name was Eric, or is Eric, well, he's my husband now, but. I said, would you like to join me on this adventure? I said, sure, why not? So we ended up going to places like New Zealand, Australia, Japan, to China, India, South Africa, Thailand, and France. She's from France, so we spent some time there. After visiting these places, we obviously had to adapt to many situations. One in particular sticks out. We were in Tokyo, the 37th story of a high-rise hotel. It's about 2 in the morning. I woke up and I saw a glass moving from side to side. So I shook Eric and I tried to figure out what was going on, and I was beginning to panic, and I said, is it just me, or is it moving? He said, yeah, you're not crazy, it's moving. It's probably an earthquake. Happens all the time in Japan. I start to panic. I imagine the buildings like coming down around me, me having to like climb out of the rubble to be able to breathe, and then I have to stop. I had to stop, assess the situation, and adapt. As it turns out, that earthquake was a 6.9 on the Richter scale. In Japan, or Tokyo at least, they build their buildings on springs. So when the earth moves, they sway back and forth. They adapt. The third life event that I'm going to talk about is having children. After we came back from our trip, we ended up moving back to Austin to be closer to my family. And 3 months after that, as it turned out, I was pregnant. And so now we have a 10-and-a-half-month-old baby, Alexa, and every day I have to adapt. She shows me how in order to survive. And what I find is I have to do the same things that I did before, I just have 18 more pounds I need to do it with. So I've become a big fan of the baby Bjorn. What I do is I just stick her in this, strap her in, and we're ready to go. So as I stated in the beginning of my speech, it's not about survival of the fittest. It's about survival of the most adaptable. And I've been fortunate enough to have life events which have fostered this in myself, whether it was death, travel, or having children. And so for me, it's been very valuable, once again, that I have this attribute I consider most valuable, which is adaptability.